Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowden Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette. And our guest today, Montreal businessman Frank Baylis, who you're going to be hearing a lot more of because, Mr. Baylis, you have become the first person to officially throw your hat into the ring as leader of the Federal Liberal Party and possibly Canada's next Prime Minister. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, Aaron.
And the question is, why?
I was walking along, I got hit in the head, and
And here we are.
And here we
well,
are.
let's first of all, let's provide some background here. You're a Montrealer, so that in and of itself is something kind of interesting. You're also someone who used to be a Liberal MP. You were an MP from 2015 to 2019. You chose in 2019 not to run again.
That's right.
And now here we are 6 years later, and you want to run, never mind as an MP, you want to become Prime Minister of Canada. So what happened, I guess, between 2019 and now to change your mind to want to get back into politics at this level?
Yeah, great question. So what I would say is that in 2019, and I said I did my mandate, and everybody expects, we're just so used to professional career politicians that everybody says, well, you stay and you stay and you stay till we finally get tired of you and throw you out. I don't believe in that. So I'm not someone that thinks we need career politicians. I don't think it's good for our system. It wasn't designed that way, and when you go down that path, you're losing the skill set that what the system was designed to do is say, okay, you come from British Columbia, you know about fisheries, you come from a mining, you know about mining, you come from, say, the movie industry, whatever skill sets that you would go to Ottawa, work, bring that, and then go back home. But today we've got this class of career politicians, and what they're really good at is giving speeches and sloganeering and all that. But they're not living in the real world. So what happens is people are constantly frustrated, and they're constantly looking for something like that. So why did I get back in? I saw that need. I saw that need, and I didn't see anybody else really stepping up to fill that type of a role. People may or may not buy into what I'm selling, but that's what I see.
Okay.
So what are you bringing that people don't know that you think could be helpful and could carry some support?
Sure. So a little bit about my background. My dad's and my mom are both immigrants. My dad came from the UK, and my mother's a Barbadian lady. She was a nurse, and she came from Barbados. I'm born here in Montreal, and in the beginning of the 70s or whatever, my father, you've heard that story a million times, my father's job was transferred down the highway to Toronto. So then I grew up in Toronto, but my parents always loved Montreal. This is where they came in the 50s when it was the city of Canada, and when my father got a chance to come back, they came back here. And so in '89, when I joined my mother in her business, Baylis Medical, that my mom had started, I moved back here to Montreal. So that's a little bit about my background. I actually was educated in French, and people don't know this, but it's important for people to know that back then when I was born in '62, and my parents, the school right next to our house was French, they didn't want English kids. And my parents insisted, and finally they found a school. I had to take a school bus to go and get my French education. And then when we moved to Toronto, my parents said, this is wonderful, you learn a second language. So I continued in French school, not French immersion. French grade school and French high school.
So, I mean, there are a lot of questions that I think we both have. I think one is, we now know who's not in the race. Dominic LeBlanc announced the other day, and it's interesting because I don't say he was a favorite, but a lot of people thought he would stand a good chance. He's decided he doesn't want to do this. You're the first one in the race now. And I guess it's almost an advantage for you, given what we're hearing now, that you don't have a connection to the Liberal Party as it is today.
Yeah.
Because that's something the opposition will use in the case of Chrystia Freeland, for example, to say, look how close she was to the Prime Minister. You're just getting someone else like Justin Trudeau, but it's not Justin Trudeau. How are you different? First of all, with respect to the Liberal Party as it is now, because there's some key issues, like take, for example, the carbon tax.
Yeah.
That's been a focal point for this government. What are you going to do if you're elected as far as that goes?
So first of all, yes, I am very different. I am a businessman, and I'm a professional engineer by training. Okay, so I tell this story. If you have the engineer, by the way, my daughter's a lawyer, so I'm not knocking lawyers, but if you have the engineer and the lawyer, they're walking down, we look on the ground, something's broken, my brain's right away going click, 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 I can do this, I can do this, I can fix it. The lawyer's like, okay, don't touch it, who's going to blame you? No, I'm not knocking lawyers, but I'm just saying, so I bring that mindset. when I see something, my brain's right away, oh yeah, I can fix this. Let me get to work. That's a professional engineer and an entrepreneur and a businessman's brain working. That's what I bring to the table. And quite frankly, it's the polar opposite of what who we're going to be running up against, Mr. Polyev, who is an amazing, giving it speeches, amazing sloganeering. That's where it starts. Unfortunately, that's where it stops, because he's done nothing else in his life. I think it's 21 years now he's been elected and going strong. So I think Canadians want someone that's going to say, hey, I can fix this. And it's not about throwing more money at it. It's not about that. It's about re-engineering it, rethinking how we're doing it. That's what I want to bring. And I think that if I stand up there, look, let's be honest, we're doing terrible in the polls now. But I'm not afraid of that. I think if we gave Canadians a real opportunity to say, okay, what a contrast. A person that's spent his entire life giving speeches and getting people riled up, or someone that spent his entire life fixing things, building companies, creating great jobs. I like my chances, and I'm not afraid of that.
Okay, but I'm asking
asked about the
specifically
carbon
about
tax.
the carbon tax, right?
Yeah, I was ducking that.
Yeah, that's Pierre Poilievre's. That's Pierre Poilievre's main point. Every speech, every slogan,
Right.
Absolutely.
axe the tax, axe the
Absolutely.
tax. I've not heard obviously the Prime Minister, even when he resigned, brought that up and saying that would be the wrong direction for Canada to head in. So what's your plan?
Okay, so we'll talk about the tax and we'll talk about affordability right afterwards, if I can say that. But Pierre Poilievre's done a great job of saying, okay, we have a real affordability challenge right now, and I've got the quick solution. It's this carbon tax. It's not true. It's not true. That's going to be a hard sell. I get it. But what I tell people is this. As a society, we used to, years ago, take our garbage and just dump it anywhere. And then we got together and said, look, this isn't right. So we pay for garbage trucks, we pay for recycling, we have dumps. It costs money. There's a cost to it. But we say you're not dumping garbage everywhere. We protect our land. The same thing is true for our riverways and our lakes. We used to take all the sewage of a city, just pour it in the lakes and hope for the rivers and forget about it. Now we say, there's no way you're doing that. We have sewage treatment plants. We have all these things in place to say we've got to treat this stuff before we just pollute our water. So we don't allow you to pollute the earth, and there's a cost for that. We don't allow you to pollute our waters. There's a cost for that. Right now, there's going to be a cost one way or the other. I'm not married to the carbon tax, but I think telling people you can have clean air, don't worry about it, and there's no cost, this is not true. Simply not true. I have been to the cities where you don't see the sun for 4 or 5 days because of smog. There are cities right now in the world where they say, okay, today the kids can't play outside. There's all kinds of medical issues. Obviously, there's global warming and the climate change and all that. So we need to deal with this. And Pierre Poilievre saying, forget about it, don't worry about it. I'll cut the tax. This is the problem. This will solve all your problems. Because he's tied that tax to affordability, and it's not true. We have an affordability problem, and this is who I am. I'm a pretty straight talker, and so if you ask the tax, I win. If you don't ask the tax, you're going to lose. No, that's not true, and that's not the conversation I'm going to have with Canadians. I'm going to tell you, look, I want my kids. I'm sure you want your families and that to be able to go and play soccer. I don't want them to be told, no, you can't go out today. I don't want that to happen. I don't want the global warming. I play outdoor ice hockey. The last few years, the rinks aren't freezing. That's not good for our country. It's not good for us. So we're going to address this, but I'm also going to address the affordability issue. But we're going to de-link these two. And he's done a great job of linking them.
And in your opinion, they don't need to be linked. There is no link.
There's not link.
There shouldn't be.
It's not the affordable issue. We have a major price problems with housing, with rent, with groceries.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Where does that come from? That comes from the fact that we're not creating enough good jobs for Canadians. We're not investing in Canadian innovation, Canadian know-how. That's where I come in. I'm someone that's built companies, I've built high-tech companies, employed engineers, manufacturing, all in Canada. Thousands of people, families grown and built off that, fed. I'm proud of that accomplishment. And not only that, we get that going good, so we got a great job by investing in Canada and Canadians, and at the same time, our dollar goes up.
And
So-
speaking of which,
Yeah.
we're facing imminent tariff. I mean, Trump is talking 25% tariff. Like, you're a finance guy.
Yeah.
What's your theory? What's your strategy on that?
Okay, let me finish first what I was going to say
Yeah.
about the dollar, because it does affect, and I'll come to Trump. But what I was going to say is, most of our produce, or I wouldn't say most of it, but a lot of our produce, say for example, comes from California. It's from
Right.
California. So the grocer has to go and buy that produce in U.S. dollars, bring it up to Canada and sell it. And guess what? Every time our dollar goes down,
Sure.
that goes up. But so what does the average politician do? Well, I had those guys up in Ottawa, and didn't I just ream into them and tell them off and tell them they got to do something? And can you vote for me? And let's move on. But that's not a solution. Our solution is, you want affordability, we got to get our income up, and we got to get our dollar, and then our dollar will go up, and we are fiscally responsible, and then at the same time our prices will go down because we'll have our dollar will get stronger.
Yes,
So that's about the affordability.
Right, but-
I'll come to.
So, I mean, essentially, that's all well and good, but I mean, if he starts imposing 25%,
Okay.
what's your take?
All right. So I'm going to protect Canadians. Okay. I'm going to protect our jobs, our industries, our households. How? Well, throughout my 35-year plus career, I have negotiated, I can't tell you, hundreds and hundreds of contracts with Americans. I've negotiated employment contracts, insurance contracts, I've negotiated with hospitals. There's things called group purchasing organizations. These are massive organizations that purchase. I've done business with industries. I have.
But none of them had Donald Trump as their head.
Okay, but I've also done a lot of contracts with government, American government, FDA and the like. Most of the time, it's wonderful to deal with Americans. I really enjoy it. There's now and then these guys, and it's their negotiating tactic, their negotiating ploy. We'll hit them hard, keep hitting them hard, destabilize them, get them worried, get them talking about something else. We're taking over Canada. Okay, and what you need to do in that, I've dealt with this in the past. Okay, let's all calm down. You said it, yeah, you're going to take over Canada, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. We're not running around like chickens with our heads cut off. You're not freaking us out. We're going to still get down to brass tacks and discuss the contract. Now, we keep looking at ourselves. 25%, what, 20, my gosh. Okay, well, what's 25% going to do to Americans? We about have $1 billion going both ways. Both ways. So you want to hurt us, we can hurt you. We're both going to lose. And not only that, you go explain to all the northeast of the United States why their electricity bill just went up 25% because of Quebec hydropower is now costing them that much more. You go tell people that are buying oil and gas from Alberta, hey, guess what? Heating your home just went up overnight 25%. So yes, it's not good to go into trade war, but we can push back. I'd say we prepare for it, but we don't let him destabilize us, which is a classic tactic of some of these negotiators.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowden Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the hub of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowden Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowden Delicatessen. If I can shift it to another topic that's become very much top of mind, that's immigration. This Liberal government, and I think the Prime Minister admitted as much, has not done a great job in handling immigration. It's only in the last month or two that things have begun to change, that measures have been put in place to kind of limit things. What would your plan be as far as that goes?
So look, both my parents are immigrants. Most of my mom's family is immigrated here. My business partner, Chris Shaw, he is an Indian from India. He's born in India, didn't speak English when he came here. So immigration is good for Canada. Let's be clear on that. But we need intelligent, controlled immigration. Did the present government, how would I say this?
Do a good job?
Do as good a job as they could have done?
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. I don't think so. But I think it's something that we can easily get back on track. And we can put intelligent, controlled immigration in place and have people coming in through the front door and the people that we want. When my dad arrived here, he was an engineer too, like in my dad's steps. He came on a boat back in the 50s. And he said, literally, I got off the boat, and what's your profession? Engineers. He goes, okay, the companies are go line up in that. That's who's hiring engineers. With my mom, you're a nurse, we need nurses. Okay, come here. These are the hospitals looking for nurses. So we have great needs here. And if we do in immigration intelligently, we have the benefit that so many people want to move to our great country. So we can be picky. We can pick the best people.
I just want to point out on immigration, there was a story actually just this week that basically polled immigrants who have come here under the program we have now. 80% of them, I think a rough number, said they love being here, things have worked out really well. Those same people, though, said they're not happy with the way the immigration system exists today. So even though they're here, They look at what's going on, they look at other people coming into the country, and they themselves do not like the way things have gone. One of those issues is you let these people, too many people in. We don't have the housing. We already know that.
Exactly.
We offer social services, but we're already strained as far as that goes.
Exactly.
How do you deal with that? Because simply to say, I'm going to change immigration is one thing. How do we do the housing? How do we do social
Absolutely
services?
right. No, you're absolutely right, Aaron. And what I tell people is this: if I said to you, "Can Canada take 100 immigrants a year?" You're going to go, "Of course, it's going to be ridiculous." But if I say, "Can we take 100 million?" You're going to say, "Of course not. Don't be ridiculous." So we're talking a number. We're talking a number that we can properly integrate. That's not going to overwhelm our healthcare systems, not going to overwhelm our housing needs, our hospitals, and I don't want to litigate the past, what the past government has done, because I was not there and I'm not part of it. And I don't want to, and I'm going to leave that argument to Pierre Poilievre's of the world, and then I'll let professors dictate it. What I want to do is let's talk about the future. Let's talk about tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to have good immigration, controlled immigration, and we're going to have just like those people who are frustrated, and they're immigrants, but they're Canadians. They're Canadians. They say, look, we love our country. Let's do this properly.
Foreign affairs, we're not doing a very good job at that. And I'm not just talking about Trump threatening to take over the country, but Canada's, first of all, been accused of not contributing enough in terms of NATO, and on other levels, we're not getting along well with India, China, Russia. Any ideas?
Absolutely. So I've written about this. This is a challenge, again, we're going to have to deal with face on and be honest with ourselves. We go around the world signing these deals. We join NATO. And part of the paperwork, you're going to spend this much money, and then we come back here. Do we want to do that? Do we really want to do that? And then we start having this discussion, like, well, hang on a second. If we signed it as a nation, we should honor it. If we really don't want it, we can go to them and say, look, we're pulling out, or whatever we want to do. But we do have to stop going around saying, okay, I pledge to do all this for the environment, or I pledge to do all this for NATO, and then come back here and restart the negotiations. And I think that there's enough blame to go around, but the career politicians are not saying, look, honor what we said we do. And that, whether you like what we said we do or not, but people will at least respect us. And I think that's something we've got to get back to. So people are today saying, should we spend 2% or not? Hang on a second. You can't say, I want to be part of this group, and this is the part of the contract, and I signed the contract, but I'm now debating among myself if I'm going to honor it.
Okay.
We shouldn't be having that debate.
Okay.
But what about patching up relationships with, we're not patching up relationships with the countries I mentioned, and Ukraine?
Absolutely. So let's talk about, you talked about India. When I was a member of parliament for Pierre Poilievre, it's one of the most multicultural ridings in the country. There's 3 synagogues, there's 3 mosques, there's a Hindu temple, a Tamil temple, a Sikh Gurdwara, I can go on and on. And we have not, how would I say, we've allowed the High Commissioner from India at the time, Vikas Swarup, he was a friend of mine. He was invited to a Gurdwara in British Columbia, and then some extremists said if you show up there's going to be violence. And our government did nothing about that. How can that be if you have a High Commissioner being threatened in your government? So the Sikhs in my community came to me and said, Frank, this isn't right. We want good relations with India. So I said, okay, look, invite Vikas to come to your Gurdwara for a meeting. I'll go tell him, I know him well, it's fine, and it's going to be okay. And show that these extremists don't speak for everybody. These people going around saying, I speak for all Sikhs, or I speak for all Hindus, or I speak for all Jewish people. There's a whole bunch of them, and they all get up and say, I am the Paktari for everybody. So he invited him, and I went there the day of, and I get there, and I'm shocked to see police cars everywhere. What's going on? So someone had called in threats and all. Nothing happened. It was a great meeting. Everything was fine. But we've let too much of these extremists speak for Canada, where they don't have any right to, and they speak for their communities and say all kinds of outlandish, ridiculous things. Muslim people have this problem. Some guy somewhere in the world says, I'm going to bring Sharia law to Canada, and suddenly every Muslim is, what you trying to do? And they go, hang on, we don't even know this guy. So we need to stand up against these extremists, and we need to have good relations, as you said, with all these countries. But it's quite doable.
I mean, at this point in time, I mean, Justin Trudeau's been fairly much put at the children's table when it comes to like international events. I mean, and it's not just with China and Russia and basically everybody is we're not taking us seriously. I get the impression, and I don't know what happened. I mean, I remember when Mark Garneau was Foreign Affairs, he was a lot stronger. Canada had a better reputation. That has to be restored, I would think.
I would agree with you. I think that there's a great opportunity for us to reestablish ourselves as we used to. For example, when Mr. Chrétien was on the world stage, people respected us when we spoke, but we honored our contracts. We didn't always agree with Americans. There was Mr. Chrétien said, we're not going to the war in Iraq, and they didn't like it, but they respected him. And I've been in speeches where President George W. Bush was there, and he said, look, we actually didn't have a problem with Chrétien. People ever said we had a problem with him. We didn't have a problem with him because we knew where he stood. He was clear to us. And we said, okay, it was this, where I'm in, I'm out, I'm
So
in.
you're kind of making the point that maybe this is more about Justin Trudeau than it is about the Liberal Party.
What I'll say about Justin Trudeau is it's not an easy job being Prime Minister, and I think we owe him a debt of gratitude for doing the work that he's done, whether we've agreed with all of it or not. I'll leave it
No
at
one's
that.
perfect, is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll leave it at that. But
Well, let me ask, though, with reference to this question about Canada's position on the world stage, and just sort of hyper-focus it on, how do you think this party, the Liberal Party, you want to run to be the leader of the party, handled the Mideast situation? Because there was criticism really on both sides. It seems to me the government never firmly came out one way or the other. They'd say one thing on a Monday, they'd say something else on a Tuesday. How do you think they handled that? Could it have been better? Should it have been better?
I think that absolutely. I've been involved with the Muslim community. I've been worked on the Islamophobia file. The minute I was elected, we were talking before we started about my friend Marvin Rotran, and I'm part of his group, United Against Hate. We just got the second summit on anti-Semitism in place. So I've been keenly aware of the challenges that both communities have had for years and supported. I'm fighting anti-Semitism, and at the same time I'm fighting Islamophobia. And I go into these communities, and both sides are extremely upset with the party right now. And both sides are good people. They want a good Canada. Look, I was just at my local synagogue I'm not Jewish, but I know when I was a member of Parliament, Pierrefonds Dollard, and that synagogue was firebombed twice.
Yeah.
This is in Canada. Now, thank God no one was hurt, but this is completely unacceptable. So first thing with all these issues, we say, look, you may have all kinds of issues and concerns about what's going on somewhere in the world, but first and foremost in Canada, this is not to be tolerated whatsoever. I don't think anybody's spoken up firmly and hardly enough. Look, I understand you may be upset about this or that, but you are not going to attack a Hindu temple like what happened in Brampton. You're not going to be burning or trying to shoot at a synagogue. It's just no, and we need to make sure our laws are firm, hard, and we deal with these people in the absolute harshest terms because they don't represent us. They don't represent Canadian values. And I can tell you, I've been in all these communities, so absolutely could we have done a better job? I believe so.
Okay. I don't want to run out of time. I do want to ask a pretty obvious question, at least for me. You were a Liberal MP for 4 years. You said when I first spoke to you, you said, you know what, I did my job. I thought I was good, and that's why you left. You're running now for a position where if you were to win, right? We know the Parliament is prorogued until the end of March. Probably a day or two later, there'll be a no confidence vote in the House. There's going to be an election. Even if you won, you could end up being Prime Minister for 3 days. Then, if you lose the election, and I know no matter how much confidence you have in your ability, overcoming a 20 or 25% spread in polls is, I don't say is impossible, it's virtually impossible. Are you okay with the idea of becoming that Prime Minister for that short period of time and then sitting in opposition for the next 4 years if and when you lose?
It's not something I would relish, but I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this to contribute back to Canada. Now, if I was facing a different leader in Prime Minister, say someone like Mr. Charette, for example, right? And we're all partisan to a certain degree, but this is a reasonable man, and I could still feel I could contribute to Canada. And we're not going to agree on everything, but we're not going to say the whole job is to destroy you and attack you and attack you and attack you. I really want to help Canada. So if you ask me, do I relish that thought? No, because when I was elected during that 4-year period, for example, I was never partisan. When I left, I gave a speech and I said, look, I'm leaving, and I consider you all my colleagues, not the Liberals, all of them. I got a standing ovation, the whole side, because people knew when they'd say, hey, Frank, ask this question, and blah, 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 and tell us why, Conservatives are the devil worshippers. And I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. This lack of respect and that I never got into it. So when I said I'm leaving, I was respected by everybody. So I've always worked with other people because I'm there not for Frank, and I'm not, my priority is not Frank Baylis. My priority is not even the Liberal Party. My priority was always Canada. At times, I tried to engage with Pierre Poilievre because he was the finance critic. And we were doing some dumb things. I don't want to get into it, but Liberals were trying to do some bad things. And I want you, look, you need to be intelligent in criticizing our government, not just personal attacks. And I had experts that were consulting me, and I said, look, here's some experts, call them. And he looked at me like I was from the moon. He'd never understand that I'm not here to, it's not a trick, it's not a trap. I need you to do your job well because I want Canada to be well run, and I don't want to be hurting our small businesses. I don't want to be hurting our farmers. I care about Canada. So to answer your question, if I had to sit in opposition against someone that was really committed, I felt truly committed to bettering Canada, it would be a lot easier. But I will stay and try my best to make Canada better.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll be very successful at it,
But you'll stay.
I will absolutely stay. I'll rebuild the party, strengthen the party, but try and get Canadians to say, to demand more from these politicians, to say, look, stop the tax and have honest discussions and make our country better.
Oh, good luck with that.
As daunting as it will be for the Liberals to win the next election, could be more daunting in terms of, like, you're going to be up against maybe a dozen people going for the Liberal leadership, all of whom, except for maybe the Christy Clark from BC, have a national profile.
Yes, that's right.
How do you deal with that? I mean, these are all people who are known whether they're liked or respected or not.
But to Bill's point, is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
First of all, you talked about rebuilding the Liberal Party. These are all very competent people if you look at their backgrounds and that. So
Sure.
I think this is a real statement about the strength of the Liberal Party. You look at some of the names that are potentially going to be running. Even Dominic LeBlanc, who decided not to run. This is a serious man with a strong character who's done great things for the country. So I actually look at it as a positive. And you know what? If I run and lose, this is the democracy. We also have a problem with that. If someone beats me, I'm going to say hats off to you, congratulations. And if I can help the party, I'll try and help the party. So I actually think that Canadians should feel really proud. And I'm actually soulagé. I'm feeling good about the fact that we have such competent people that are interested in running for us. And if you don't like democracy, then don't run. You know what I mean? So I'm more than happy to put my name forward and say to Canadians, this is what I offer, this is what I can do. And if they say, look, we think someone else is better for us, well, that's democracy.
All right. And on that note, we will say thank you for being here today with us on the Corner Booth. Wish you the best of luck. It's a pleasure meeting you as well. That wraps up another edition of the Corner Booth podcast here from the Snowden Deli. We'll see you again soon.